Okay, cool. Hi, I am Tawhida Wahabzada. I am one of the co-founders of Onward, which is our network for the well-being and advancement of relocated dreamers. We were formerly known as Departed Dreamers. This is the third of our video series called Dreamers Abroad, which focuses on the lives of dreamers who have self-deported and how their lives have changed since moving to a new country. This is definitely not legal advice, no encouragement for any decision making. This is simply a series of dreamers and their experiences of leaving the United States and living abroad. Today we have our co-founder Monsy here. She actually was the one who developed the Dreamers Abroad video series, and Monsy is here to talk about their experience about moving to Germany. So Monsy, could you introduce yourself? What is your name and age, and where are you currently located? And could you please
Hi.
share, oh, sorry. Um,
Go on.
uh, could you please share when you were a DACA recipient?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Monsy Hernandez. I'm 28 years old, and I'm currently located in Duisburg, Germany. I was a DACA recipient between 2014 and 2017.
Great. And that's wonderful to hear. Where were you located before departing the United States?
Before departing the United States, I was located in South Carolina.
And could you explain more about your reasons departing the United States? I do remember in few of our internal meetings, you mentioned that South Carolina was a lockout state. Could you also elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so the lockout states include some of the southern states. They're essentially the states that focused on having heavier restrictions for dreamers and DACA recipients. Essentially, they make it harder for you to go to college and pursue higher education. So, for example, in South Carolina, if you're undocumented, it's illegal to go to school. I believe it's the only state that has this law. For DACA recipients, it means you have to pay out of country tuition. So, some students may have to pay out of state tuition, which is relatively more expensive, but out of country tuition is almost 3 times more expensive than the regular tuition, which makes it very difficult for a lot of DACA recipients to actually be able to pay going to school, in particular because we also don't qualify for any student aid. This is part of the reason why I left the United States. I really wanted to go to college and I wanted to continue studying. I wanted to learn a third language. And that wasn't going to be possible in South Carolina because one, I didn't have enough money to continue going to school. And two, it was very, very difficult in general to try to become anything in South Carolina. Even if you do, for example, try to become a nurse, you're allowed to take the courses, you're allowed to pass the test, but you're not allowed to be legally certified to do certain professions. And it's very, very difficult to succeed in South Carolina as a DACA recipient. I left the United States as a whole, however, when my mom was put into a detention center. After I saw what happened to her in the detention center, I decided that I no longer wanted to live in a country that was willing to treat people the way that I had treated my mom. And so I decided to self-deport in 2017.
Wow, Monsi, that is incredibly courageous of you to self-deport. And it's also admirable to just see your focus and your dedication to education. That's incredibly admirable. And even 2017, because like the other dreamers I've met who did choose to leave the US, they left towards 2019, 2020. So 2017 is definitely on the earlier end. And I wanted to ask because you left like what month in 2017?
I left in November.
So right after Jeff Sessions' speech on rescinding DACA, like right at the very beginning, because I recall they rescinded DACA around September 2017, or the first attempt to, or the attempt to. And I want to ask because like 2017 was definitely earlier on. What was your initial experience in Germany, and what was like the process, or like yeah, what was like the journey like to move to Germany and to your new beginnings?
It was very difficult moving to Germany. First of all, leaving my family behind, finding out that I was banned for 10 years from the United States was particularly difficult. Being in a new country where I didn't speak the language. I was here basically with only my husband and our birds, and we had no one else that we could rely on or call for if we needed anything. So because we were waiting on our permits for a year, we also didn't rely on an income. We had to live on savings during that entire year. It was a very difficult process that took a lot of mental toll on me, I think, at the time. It was it was very lonely to be here for quite a few years. And the very beginning was the hardest part, particularly because we got here in winter and I'd never experienced a German winter before. But I'm used to them now and I actually look forward to them. So over time, it has gotten easier, but the journey has definitely been difficult. It was a strain, an economic strain for us. It was a mental strain for us, and overall, just an upward climb.
Mm, Yeah, yeah, the journey to leave is incredibly isolating, and this is definitely one of the reasons why we want to cultivate a supporting community with Onward. But could you explain more about the legal process of moving to Germany? Because you mentioned waiting for a permit for a year in Germany, I believe. Could you explain more about like the process of like the kind of visa you obtained, the kind of visa your spouse obtained, and then when landing in Germany, could you also explain more about like the difference between the visa and the permit? I'm very curious about that.
Mhm. So my husband applied for a worker's visa, which is essentially just something that is given to people who already have a job here and have an apartment. I applied for the family reunification visa, which is essentially just a visa where you have to learn some German and you have to have a certain amount of money on your bank account. And that's how you get in. So for me, the process was essentially passing A1 German and then crossing the border and letting the border officials know that I was going to be reunifying with my husband, at which point we were going to have the family reunification visa given to us once it was approved. So that was kind of the trickier part because they can also say no to you if they don't believe that you're going to be doing this. And so you have to make sure that you have a plan B when you're at the border in Germany, or that you have better proof or very solid proof that you're going to be meeting with someone and that your visa is going to be approved. For example, for me, I had copies of the fact that we had an apartment. I had copies of the fact that my husband had a job, and I had a copy of our marriage certificate to show to border officials in case it was necessary. It wasn't, but I like to make sure that I cover all of my bases when it comes to that. My husband essentially got the Aufenthaltstitel, which is a type of permit to work. It doesn't allow him, however, to study. And right now we have a visa for 2 years. That one we have to renew every 2 years, whereas the Aufenthaltstitel essentially just continues existing without us having to do anything. Even though it does technically expire, you receive a Fiktionsbescheinigung whenever it expires, which essentially allows you to elongate your stay while your visa is being processed once more.
I see. And is there a pathway to residency eventually for you?
Yeah, so after 8 years, you're allowed to apply for citizenship actually. And well, the German government is actually working on lowering that to 5 years, which means if it passes, I would actually qualify for citizenship in right now.
Wow, that is incredible. Um,
Yeah, so we're really hoping that it goes through.
Yeah, that process must feel incredibly different than living in the US, waiting for an idea, waiting for a solution, not having any possibilities to have more of like a permanent status.
Yes, and it's particularly uh to me astounding that I was even able to get a permit so easily. I really don't think this would have been able to be possible if I had done this in the United States, if I had just shown up at the border and told them my husband is waiting for me and has a job and I'm reunifying with him. And then they just said, that's great, and stamped my passport. That would have never happened in the United States. I certainly wouldn't be able to work and study in the United States. And I wouldn't even be considering the idea of becoming a citizen of the country I'm living in the United States, because I know just how expensive and difficult that process is. Whereas here, it's just a matter of time. And I know exactly how much time that is. And I know that it is a guaranteed and assured thing that I can look forward to.
Absolutely. And with that, like, could you explain more about the opportunities that opened up to you since moving to Germany? You touched on some, but we're definitely curious to learn more, especially with um, your like dedication to education.
So it's been really great to be able to go back to school and to study. So I'm currently studying to pass my C1 test, which means I'm going to become officially a native speaker of German, at the level of a native speaker of German. And that's going to make me officially a polyglot, which is something that I never really believed I would be able to achieve, but I'm very happy that I've gotten this far in my journey to learn a language. And after that, I'm going to continue doing school. I'm going to continue learning social work and community organizing, which is something I never would have been able to do in South Carolina. In Germany, school is also paid by the government, and they also actually give you assistance to pay for your groceries and your apartment while you're in school, and you get a discount on your taxes also while you're a student. So there's no need for me to apply for financial aid or any of those things, because the government is just naturally going to assist all of the people that are learning here, which I think is one of the biggest benefits that I can look forward to. Um, Also, health insurance. I now have health insurance after 17 years of not having any. I can't even say how grateful I am for that. Um, After 17 years of not going to the doctor, I had a lot of catching up to do, but thankfully everything is great. And now anytime that I'm sick, I don't have to cross my fingers and hope for the best. I can just go to the doctor and get medicine or whatever it is that I need. I also have the financial stability now that I'm no longer living in poverty as I was in the United States. As a dreamer, the amount of things that we have to pay for every 2 years, and the difficulty of finding a job that isn't just blue collar, kind of keeps you stuck in a cycle of poverty. But here you're actually able to get a steady wage and you're able to survive while working a lot less. So the economic stability has been wonderful. And I actually even get vacation days here that are paid, which is a really nice perk of Germany.
Wow. Like, it's like having a decent standard of living is a lot more attainable. And even just like, I can't even imagine how difficult it is to even just alter your mindset about seeing a doctor. That's something like that I had to face with in Canada as well, where because in the US, I was so used to paying like $400 a month on health insurance, for example. And then I was always nervous about seeing a doctor because I know with all the co-pays or all the additional fees, I just didn't have that mindset to see a doctor. I would always delay seeing a doctor unless it's absolutely necessary. So now, like, I'm also working on if there's anything wrong, I'm going to see a doctor. It's all paid through our taxes. And just altering our mindset of like taking care of our own health has always been like difficult for me since moving here.
Definitely. I mean, even we get 2 free dental cleanings per year, and all your dental work
Wow.
is also covered. And even I hesitate to go to those. I always feel like they're going to charge me this time if I look at them the wrong way.
2 free. That's like, I mean, dentists here recommend getting like cleaning every 6 months. So that's like basically you have the whole year covered of your dental cleaning slash appointments. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's all covered by the insurance, which is such an incredible blessing, I have to say.
Wow, we talked about the opportunities. What difficulties have you experienced? You did touch on some difficulties when you moved to Germany, but could you elaborate more on the difficulties?
Mhm. Yeah, so the difficulties were mainly brought about, I think, by the language barrier. It's very, very difficult to learn a new language, and it's very, very difficult to work in a country when you don't speak the language. I threw myself into my job at a bakery without speaking any German, and I have to say that's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. But eventually I managed to learn the commands that I needed to, and over time, my German started to actually grow into something that was understandable and fluent. So with time, that got easier, but it's also very difficult to make friends here. In Germany, I think that people tend to stick together with the friends that they grew up with. And so making friendships was difficult, which may not sound like a big deal, but since we were living by ourselves here and we were essentially alone in Germany, it was a very lonely time and it was very isolating. So it was very, very hard to go, I think, the first 2 to 3 years without friends and without a support network or a community really that we could rely on. And that's why it was so helpful to me to meet Jason and you, because you guys understood what it was like to go through this process and you understood how it was to be going through this. So we created our own little community, and that was extremely helpful to me in the long run.
Oh, my heart is melting now. Oh, Monsy, I appreciate you, and I'm really glad. I'm really grateful for our friendship, even though I haven't met you in person yet. It's just like the same kind of the same kind of obstacles that we faced. It all like we all develop like a mutual bond, and there's that common like compassion that we developed. And I'm really glad to have the opportunity to know you and to co-found this network with you. So I'm very grateful for your friendship and your camaraderie and all your support altogether. And always keep on being you, Monsy.
Oh, thank you. Same to you.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna turn off the recording now.